Tsukimi, and this is Observations with Otsu. A couple preliminary things before we get started, about 30 to 60 seconds of your time. My Aroon bots are coming. The Aroon Pro system is finally here. It's finally going to start running. I have a wait list. I'm going to put that Google form for the wait list in the description of this video, but I'm also going to start rolling out the official beta of that. It's more, not really quite a beta. It's an actual real deal. But I'm going to start rolling that out and trying to see who will sign up, things like that, and go forward from there. The second thing is I'm actually going to launch a Discord group. It's going to be completely new. I do have a current Discord group for Apex members. That's for the Academy. That's a 12-week course. I'm going to launch that next month. But for this week, I'm planning to launch a Discord group that it is a paid thing. And that might suit your needs, it may not, but it's going to offer quite extensive charts, communicating with me, extra videos, more topics, kind of review things with you. So I'm kind of like a trading coach, so to speak, kind of a trading coach slash portfolio management. If you like that, please let me know. Please let me know in the comments, and we can get that started as well. I'm also going to have a trading challenge with that too. Probably going to start at about $50,000 and kind of work that up. So pretty excited about that. Anyway, spend too much time on that. Let's get started. All right, first things first, we tend to go to BTC on the weekly. We used to do the total market cap. We're done with that now. It's not quite important. I don't go over stocks like a lot of other people. I've explained why in other videos. But we're going to go to the BTC Weekly for now. And the last candle we had was a pretty surprising candle. Kind of have a swing pattern failure, or swing failure pattern. I always get those mixed up. Present on the weekly close. It's a very good sign. We also floated above the 50 RSI. Also a good sign. The only bad thing as far as other little preliminary things is the Aroon actually flipped bearish. And it's not necessarily as bad as you might think. Excuse me, because the point is this needs about 2 more candles to decide how bearish that actually is. And so right now is a chance for the bears to get kind of a last straw as far as like, can this keep going? And if they actually, it's more so in the bullish, in the bulls' hands. The bulls have 2 weeks to make something of this before bears can start taking control. So it's kind of, the 2 weeks might be a little bit of a contest. You might see a little bit of a chop, extended chop than you might be expecting, and we'll look at the daily to see how that might work. But as far as this goes, not necessarily the best sign, but we can kind of look into that and see like how serious is that. Particularly the last time we had that was right here, and we had that led from the 19,000s to basically the 15,000 ish zone, right? But here we're on the flip side of the RSI and the AO, so that's also a good sign. The last time that happened on the AO was right here, which was close to a bottom, and we had a divergence actually. So I wouldn't necessarily put too much weight into that, but Aroon rules still dictate that bears are slightly in control on the weekly, not necessarily on lower time frames, but weekly for sure. The big thing is bulls, based on Aroon rules, it has 2 candles in order to turn this into a big trend pattern like this or a consolidation pattern like this. And so if the bears cannot take control, this starts to go downward, which makes a consolidation like this possible. So basically, long story short, I'll have an educational video about this, but the bulls have 2 candles to kind of put this back into their favor, right? And the biggest way to do that is to prevent a new low, and so that's quite easy to do right now. To make a new low, well, we just have to have a drop of 6%, which is very possible to do. We're kind of having a positive reaction so far, but the week is young. So that's basically the weekly as it stands. Another thing I want to look at is the rectangle here, or the rectangle, just the rectangle that I'm doing right now. When you can put it over here like this, you have that double top that I mentioned from the past week. I've mentioned that really for the past 2 or 3 weeks. We had that jump. That's good. When we have a SPF, or a swing failure pattern, on a touch of resistance, on a touch of support like this on a double top, it's a very good bullish sign. Another thing that we see is this EMA holding above this line. It's very, very good. Very good if you're a long-term bull. You just got to fight these next 2 weeks. So overall, I really like that. So now we are going to go into the daily and kind of see what this looks like here. So we had the big bounce up from here. I was very vocal on Twitter that we had a wedge here. I counted this wick into this section right here, and then I had it roughly around here. And what I addressed is when we have a wedge and we have a support structure, the wedge actually tends to fail more often than not, and then it addresses the support. But then it actually has a chance to go back up into the wedge, and when it does, it's a very good long sign. We got that. We got exactly what I was saying. Not that I don't care that I got it right or wrong necessarily, but that's kind of the move that we got. And it's historical. It's happened before. That's why I mentioned it. I'm not mentioning it to brag or nothing like that. So we got the wedge. We touched the support, and now we bounced off of that going into the weekend. And now it's a little bit undecisive, but we're still in the wedge. We haven't broke out completely yet on the daily. We're still below rather on the 50 RSI. Still below here on the AO. We got the bullish consolidation showing up here. It just clicked over this past candle, or in the past 2 hours. So now the bulls have the ball in their court. They're down by 5 or whatever, but they're able to take control. They're able to get the 3 free throw, penalty shot, whatever you want to call it for your sport that you like. That's kind of the MO right now, right? So overall, this does look pretty good in my opinion, until, as far as some key observations, until this breaks down, I am very heavy long. I longed here. I actually longed also at 25.9, but I also longed here, and I think I added another long. So I'm pretty long right now, and who knows if that's going to be a good thing or not. A little nervous about that, but hey, I'm doing my trading rules. I don't rely on emotions. So this is roughly the type of setup that I have, and I think that's a pretty good setup in my opinion. If you're trying to do this right now, I would probably wait until you get a break of this red line. So something like so. So if you extend this over like this, somewhere in this zone above the break is where I would go. And I think I can do it with a rotated rectangle. I think, yeah, so something like this, but I'm going to extend it out like so. I haven't drawn one of these in such a long time. But when you, somewhere in this blue range would be where you want to long. You can't long up here, obviously, because of time. But somewhere in this range is kind of where you want to long, above this support and at the current candle. So that's the long zone that I'm looking at. So when you add that right here, this line is within this pattern, so that's good. That's what I would prefer to see. I would also prefer to have the stop loss under here. The problem is the R&R is no longer good. So you could probably put it in the middle or even here at the top, because as long as it's inside the wedge, it's fine. And you can also do it on the other side of the wedge, because generally the wedges don't get retested once they get broken. So that's kind of the MO with that. Shorts, unfortunately, I'm not a big short person right now. I would really wait for a while, mainly because you have this structure right here. Once you get a reclaim, it's so hard to get it back to below this line, and that's just one of the big reasons. Another one is you have a breaker right here, so you have a lot of defense. And so I honestly wouldn't really short anything with size until you get below this mark, and then target something like this, and maybe target the lows. The problem is that we're going back down to 20,000, and you got bigger problems. So shorts just really aren't working for me right now, in my opinion. Let's go to the 4 hour before we go to Ethereum. So we kind of got this consolidation at the 200. That's a key thing to know. Excuse me, it's a much bigger difference than this, where we had the consolidation and then the pushback leading into this deviation. So this is not as bearish as this was. The deviation is extremely bearish or bullish, depending on what side the deviation's on. In this case, this is bearish. It's very bearish. This one wasn't a deviation. This one's a consolidation above a trend resistance. So there's still a little quote-unquote hope for this. The divergence here is not too appealing. The Aroon ready to cross bearish isn't really appealing either. but we're going to see how this plays out, especially since I have longs, and I might get stopped out if this fails, but it just happens. It just is what it is, right? One thing that we can look at here is this overthrow. So you can kind of take this zone and like all these zones and kind of do like so. And so it's actually protected so far. Not the best setup in my opinion. I don't like these rigid methods to price action, but that's just how it is sometimes. So that's what I see. As far as setups, this might be an okay long for now. But honestly, I would probably rather focus on a higher time frame. This isn't too bad actually because it went above the 200 here. I like the 6 hour a lot sometimes, but nothing too conclusive for this on the 4 hour. I think the biggest example would be looking at this trend line here and seeing all of this. And so this is probably another reason why we're getting some, not quite failure, but a slower consolidation period here. Let's get rid of this EMA. So this break of the trend line would be a good place to long in my opinion. And so that's probably the key observation for this video, for observations with Otsu on Bitcoin, would be something like this. A trend break of this would be very ideal, especially since we're floating above the 50. So that's kind of what I see. I'm not in favor of, and that also favors the wedge. So that's kind of goes into the daily aspect. So that's kind of it with Bitcoin. I'm going to go to Ethereum, kind of do the same review, and then we'll wrap it up. All right, let's go to Ethereum. Now, I mentioned before in previous observations videos that Ethereum was looking a little bit weak. That tends to be the case for last week as well, because although we had a good reclaim, we also had a bearish candle. So we're making a new local low here, and that is a little concerning, especially when in combination we actually failed the RSI 50 on that, and we also have the Aroon bearish cross as well. Knowing what I know about all this, it's a little bit extra of a context. I don't want to confuse you, but this is telling me that Bitcoin may not be as bearish as I think it is. It might still be bullish, whereas Ethereum and other alts might bleed out in comparison to the Bitcoin strength. We can kind of look at that very briefly here on the ETHBTC pattern and kind of see where this is going. We're going to remove all this as well. I'm also going to add my color band strategy here, kind of give me the overall strength. It's been bearish for quite some time. One thing I do see is we kind of have a continuation pattern trying to form here, so that's a good sign overall. But as far as the ETHBTC strength, if you want Ethereum to be a little more bullish, you also want this to kind of bounce off of here. But generally speaking, a consolidation at this trend line tends to break downwards, so we will see about all that, and kind of showing that ETH is probably a little weaker than BTC right now. It also goes into my theory that Bitcoin needs to gain a lot more strength with its dominance. Let's go ahead and check that briefly as well and kind of see. It's kind of been holding this bullish line for now. We're kind of getting into the 50 mark. Once we get into this 50 zone, which I have marked, tends to turn the tide as the market goes around. Unfortunately, that's typically bad for alts. When the market goes up very high with Bitcoin dominance, alts usually suffer the most. That's kind of why I've been focusing more on Bitcoin lately, if you see my tweets, because I think that's going to be the bigger action. A lot of people have stopped focusing on alts and turned to stocks. I don't agree with that. I think you should stay in crypto and focus on Bitcoin. You want to gain more Bitcoin anyway. And by the time that everybody migrates to stocks, it's probably going to be too late. So when the 50 clears, usually it's time for Bitcoin to do a run. And you can kind of see here, about July 18th was the last time we had 50. That was pretty much the end of the bear market. So we kind of have that going on as well. And from here to basically here was a pretty good run. I think, what was it, 2020? This was kind of where the COVID thing happened, so to speak, but then we had the run up, right? And so once we got this, a rejection of this was basically the end of alt season. We see here on the weekly we had that that reclaim. Go ahead and turn this back off, even though it's still relatively strong. It's a little weaker than Bitcoin for now. We had that Adam and Eve pattern I suggested, the deviation. Now we're kind of stuck in the middle zone. Not a real way to quantify this in my opinion, because we're kind of stuck in a few different order blocks here. not very conclusive in my opinion. This is one of those rare cases where Bitcoin's just kind of stuck in a weird zone. And really the best way to really mark this, unfortunately, is just to mark it all at once and just do everything here like so. I don't really like that at all. I really don't. But it does kind of quantify the larger context going into 2024, because I'm not so sure about Ethereum going into the rest of the year. I think we could see as low as 1509, but I don't really have any other trades other than this. I would either wait to buy at 1509 or short that, or buy above 21, whichever comes first. So that's basically it for the weekly. Let's go into the daily really quick. So we had kind of like a weird support structure, kind of distribution, expansion, deviation, like I said, drawdown, fade, but this got rejected here. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. This recent rejection's not exactly what I want to see. If you're a bull, you kind of want to wait. You kind of want to go with the trend line again. Wait for this to break until you see anything else. The problem also is that you have this kind of structure right here. Not really so good. This needs to be broken anyway. Otherwise, this is just a bearish retest, right? So I don't really like this per se. And so this pattern here, we could kind of turn that into an order block and kind of have something like so. And you could probably even put this down here as well. So it kind of goes a little bit closer to that 1509 that we looked at earlier. So right, and this also confirms that this might get rejected. We had the push up rejection, so we might see a little downturn. It might be interesting because we haven't really seen Bitcoin and Ethereum go in opposite directions, but they are showing a little bit of weakness in comparison to one another. We'll see. I'm not long on Ethereum right now, honestly. Yeah, I think I do have Ethereum, but I bought really. If I did, I bought a long time ago, so not too concerned about longing this right now. I think there's better opportunities later. So let's go on to the 4 hour, and then we could look at some key observations. Here's that rejection that we see. So here's that order block right here. Pretty significant. Got the double top, got the rejection before the mid. This will be easier to look at based off of something like so. So I did the candles, the candle bodies, got the double top rejection, and it's looking to break up again. So we'll see. If it breaks up again, good conviction that it'll go up higher. If not, this might actually be a short opportunity. Let's go right ahead right here. You focus on something like this. If you want to do a very tight stop, you could do something like this, target the lows. That's actually a really good position, to be honest with you. However, this needs to break first, and we need to get another low in to kind of confirm that. So I do like that short, honestly. I'm not personally going to take it. I'm not saying it's going to even work, but I do like that setup. That's I tend not to see good short positions of an R of 3 or higher. So usually I let my script do that. So that's kind of what I see for the observation with that. So or key setup. So the key observation with this would be wait for this trend line to break. You could also look for a short at this range. All in all, you could pick your levels. It's hard to pick these kind of levels right here. So I would just stick with this trend line to long. If you wanted to long on the lower level, it's really tough because you also got this section right here. So you could also long if it goes down to about 1660, 1650, 16 and a half or whatever. That's longable as well, and that would match that short position that I shared with